The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Kalshi. Make real money predicting sports. Kalshi is available in every state. Also, get $20 for free. Sign up with the code SGPN. That's Kalshi promo code SGPN. And welcome, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Currently Tuesday night, March 3rd, around 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the breakdown of Indian Wells. We only have one event for the upcoming week, a big one, a Masters 1000 event. So we have quarter odds, a bunch of well-known players here, and it should be a pretty fun event. Do want to point out, though, the event is going to take a decently long time to actually complete, as the event's starting on Wednesday, and it's going to last 11 days. So it's going from March 4th to the 15th. So once again, a lot of matches involving one event, so keep that in mind. But either way, we're going to break down the only event on the card for the upcoming basically week and a half. Before we get into any of the actual breakdown of the event and the quarters, etc., a reminder that you support the show by subscribing on YouTube. You also find the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So leave a rating and a review there if you listen to it audio only. Plus, a reminder, check out the SGPN app, free to download in the App Store. You also can find all of the picks and podcasts on that app as well, completely free to download. But once again, Tennis Gambling Podcast, subscribe on YouTube, and leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store. We have a great discount code right now for the merch store. So if you end up using the actual code MARCH at checkout, you'll be getting a nice 15% off everything. So keep that in mind. Nice discount code right now. But also check out the Tennis Gambling Podcast merch on the merch store. We have sweatshirts, we have t-shirts, we have mugs, we have hats now. A lot of options, but think you'll like the actual content that we have. And I think, once again, you should check it out. I think you'll like the selection that we have. Before we get into the actual breakdown of Indian Wells, though, a reminder that you can check out the Survivor contest that we're having for March Madness for college basketball. $25K in Survivor Madness, winner take all prize. A person to come in first will take home $25K guaranteed. Sign up at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/survivor. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/survivor. If you're new to Splash Sports, use promo code SGPN, play $5 and $50 in bonus entries. So starting off with the recap of what happened for the last episode. Phenomenal. We won everything. For the lock and dog, we did an episode for the final in Acapulco between Caboli and Tiafoe, and we swept. We had the over 22.5 games as the lock of -125, as Caboli won in straight sets, but it did land 7-6, 6-4, so went over by the hook. Nice win there. For the dog, Caboli moneyline was the play at +115. He won in straight sets. Tiafoe being favored at like -135. That was an insane price. Caboli looked good, and Caboli got the job done in a pretty competitive matchup. Third set was looking like it was going to be a straightforward win, because Caboli was up a set and had a couple break points. Did not convert, but either way, he ended up getting a break to win. So either way, he did a nice job at the end of once again regaining his composure and getting the job done there. But Caboli, for the actual second set, got a break early. Then you ended up seeing him blow 2 break points. Then Tiafoe broke back to get us the over. And then Caboli ended up breaking immediately, and he held to win. So either way, fun match there, fun event in Acapulco. But either way, Caboli did get the job done for us, as the over got there for the lock, and the dog got there for the dog. So overall, great episode there. Plus, we also won an outright. We did not do an episode in Santiago for the final, but Darderi ended up beating Hanfman in a competitive straight set win, as he won 7-6, 7-5. But we had Darderi to win the event at 7-1. So a nice weekend for us for the outrights, and once again, a great week for us. Even though we did not have Caboli to win Acapulco, we had Tiafoe to win the quarter at 650. We had Caboli to win the quarter at 240. So we had 2 solid priced outrights for the quarters. Then we won Medvedev in Dubai at 750, and we won Darderi in Santiago at 7-1. So overall, phenomenal episode and phenomenal week for us for the outrights, and hopefully we'll keep rolling here for Indian Wells. But apologies, I could not do the episode for Santiago over the weekend, but unfortunately, I was playing poker instead, so apologies. I made $500, so I guess that was worth it on my end, but apologies if you were expecting an episode there for Santiago. But either way, if you took Darderi pre-event, you made yourself a decent amount of money. So either way, a time to move on into the upcoming event for Indian Wells. Thinking if there's anything else that's worth talking about for the event in itself. I don't think there really is. The one thing I will point out with for Indian Wells is that you do have a bit of a change compared to previous years. According to the actual research that has gone into qualifying, which is going on right now for Indian Wells, the courts have been playing faster. There have been a lot more aces than previous years. So I know Indian Wells historically has been a very, very slow event. It's one of the slowest hard courts on the entire tour, which is why Medvedev has had issues with the court speed here. However, it does seem like the courts are playing faster. So I will mention recent winners in a second of the event, but I do want to point out it will not be playing at the same slow speed as it has been in previous years. They made a couple of tweaks to keep that in mind, so don't blindly follow the historical data. I'm going to mention it in a second, but keep in mind they did change the actual court layout and the actual speed of the courts, which might result in this event playing differently than in previous years. So I wanted to mention that, but once again, should be a fun overall event. Usually is in Indian Wells, but either way, once again, wanted to mention there has been a slight change in my opinion, gameplay that is projected for this year's event compared to previous years. Besides that, though, there is one other event, or not really one other event, but one other storyline worth talking about, which of course is the travel issues that people are having right now if they played in Dubai. You ended up seeing a bunch of, let's say, I don't want to use the word war, but a bunch of military involvement in the Middle East. And as a result, some players have been stuck in Dubai. So, for example, Medvedev has been stuck in Dubai. So I'm not exactly sure what his story is when it comes to his ability to actually leave Dubai. But keep that in mind. There might have been a couple of players who were stuck in Dubai and maybe have to get to Indian Wells later than expected, or maybe not at all. So keep that in mind. But the point is there are a couple of players who are, for lack of a better word, stranded or stuck in Dubai, and we'll see if they're able to make the trip over to Indian Wells. But keep that in mind. There are a couple of players who maybe if things don't go well, will be forced to miss the event. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but once again, wanted to mention that a couple of people, top players, are stuck in Dubai. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But as far as I know, nothing has really changed. I don't believe there has been an update when it comes to Medvedev and others actually being able to get out of there. But as of right now, the main draw matches start on Wednesday, and we'll see if they can actually, once again, make the trip. But keep that in mind. You might see a couple of last-second withdrawals, and you might see a couple of lucky losers fill in if Medvedev and a couple other guys cannot actually get out of Dubai based on what's happening right now in the Middle East. Anyway, I wanted to mention that, just to keep that in mind. Before we get into any of the actual outrights, for Indian Wells, a reminder, they were brought to you by our sponsor, which is Kalshi. So it's a real money prediction market available in every state. Tons of trading options for your favorite sports. Besides sports, they also have markets for politics, entertainment, and even weather. And on top of that, new customers for Kalshi get $20 for free when they sign up with the code SGPN. That's Kalshi promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's been on a heater recently for college and for the NBA. Super easy to sign up for. Run predictions off the house model. You can also use the leaderboard to get other people's models or build your own from scratch. You can also pair it up well with Kalshi. So once again, you can use the prediction markets with the models that you build to potentially make some money. So keep that in mind. But if you want to go premium with the membership, use the code SGPN25. We download the app for a nice discount, 25% off your first month. That's Rhythm, RATHMM. Code SGPN25 for a quarter first month at Rhythm. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the recap of what happened over the weekend, both for the finals in Acapulco and Santiago, as well as the recap of the outrights that we won and the lock and dog picks. Now, moving on to Indian Wells. So, recent winners, Draper ended up beating Rune handily in the final last year. Bit of a shock there. I think people were expecting Alcaraz to repeat again. Didn't happen, and Draper got the job done there in the final against Rune. Alcaraz, though, beat Medvedev in 2 straight years before that, and we saw Fritz beat Nadal as Fritz was able to get the hometown tournament, basically, in his back pocket. So either way, we'll see how the event plays out. Djokovic, though, has won this event 5 times, tied for the most ever. Recently, he's been horrific in the event. He did lose to Dzanchilp, lost to Nardi, but a reminder, they ended up speeding up the courts. So we'll see if Joker plays better. But he is a 5-time champion at this event. It's been a while, but he has won this event 5 times. Now, for the first quarter, once again, you have a lot of star players here, so we might get a bit chalky, full disclosure. So for the first quarter, this is going to be the Alcaraz quarter. He's minus 400. De Minaur is plus 550 after losing to Gibson in Acapulco. Bublik is at 12-1, Korda at 14-1 off of the title in Delray. Ruud at plus 2,000, Dimitrov at 3,300, Vatrad is 3,300, Runeknich is 40-1, and you kind of get the point. So simply put, I'm taking Alcaraz. I'm not going to change anything. He has been undefeated in, I believe, 30 straight outdoor matches. Yeah, he's an absolute machine. I got nothing else to add. I mean, right now, he's number 1 in the world for a reason. He has won a bunch of hardcore events in a row. U.S. Open last year. He ended up winning the Aussie Open this year. He won Doha this year. He's been rolling. So I'm going to go with Alcaraz by himself. 2-time champion. Yes, I know they're speeding the courts up, but Alcaraz I still think is going to be very tough to beat in general. He fired Ferrero. He's been winning anyway. Nothing's really changed. And I do think that the actual quarter is pretty weak. De Minaur, we know, has never beaten Alcaraz, and he's the second favorite at 550. Bublik, we know that he has been very good over the last couple of months, but this year he's been fine, but post-Aussie Open hasn't really done anything amazing. I think Alcaraz should run away with this quarter. I think he'll win comfortably. I'm taking him by himself. I will not bet this at minus 400 if you want to parlay this, but I think you can do that, but I think Alcaraz should win the quarter. I got nothing else to really add. I see Matt, by the way, telling me that Medvedev, Rublev, and Kashanov all got out of there, so they will be playing Indian Wells. So thank you, Matt. I did not see that update, but once again, keep in mind that they will be getting to the event late, so we'll see what happens. But thank you for pointing that out to me, that the Russians were able to actually get out of Dubai. I did not see that actual update, so thank you. I appreciate that. Anyway, point is moving on to the second quarter, segueing with the Russians. This is the Medvedev quarter with Djokovic. So Medvedev is now going to be playing. He got out of there. Djokovic, though, is favored at plus 160. Medvedev is 250. Fritz, former champion, back in basically his hometown, is at 4-1. Draper at 9-1 after we saw him lose a bit early on in the last event over there in Dubai. You saw Leheshka at 14-1. You have Hurkacz at plus 2,000, who's been horrendous so far this season. Humbert plus 2,000. Mickelson at 22-1. If you want to go for a longer shot American. Cerundolo at 25-1. You kind of get the point. So, look, Djokovic, historically speaking, has been really good long-term, but horrendous recently. You lose to Nardi and you lose to Zanshulp, I'm going to have problems backing you in the event. However, I mentioned before they ended up speeding up the court, so I might be willing to toss out the recent struggles. I will take Djokovic at plus 160. I think the draw is very manageable, especially for him, and I do think with the layoff, Joker has been picking his tournaments wisely. I think he'll be fine in the event. But looking at the actual rounds here is a bye, followed by either Majcik or Pericard, followed by Mutet. It could be Kovacevic or Hurkacz, but Mutet is the seeded player in his immediate section. I mean, that's a pretty solid draw for Djokovic. And he's in the same immediate section afterwards as Draper or Cerundolo, who have to play each other first. So I actually like the draw for Djokovic quite a bit, especially if Mutet does find a way to beat Hurkacz. Hurkacz could be tricky on these courts, but he's been pretty bad all season. So I think Djokovic should find a way. But I do think in general, he should play well. I think Djokovic, of course, is the third best player in the world right now, behind the likes of Sinner and Alcaraz. And Djokovic, we saw beat Sinner in the Aussie Open. So Djokovic, I think, is going to play pretty good tennis here. Plus 160, I'll go for. I think the draw is pretty favorable when you have Mutet as your seeded player in your quarter, or in your section, I mean. I think it's a decent draw for Djokovic. I'll take him there at plus 160. Now, since Medvedev is actually going to be playing, as pointed out by Matt in the comments section, I'll go with him at plus 250. We saw him win in Dubai. We took him to win at 750. And I think his draw is not bad either. I do think it's tougher than Djokovic's. Does have Tabilo or Joder after a bye. Leheshka, though, has not been very good recently. I think Medvedev should beat him. You're looking at Fritz or Humbert. Now, we have a bit of a, I'd say, a toss-up in the head-to-head matchups between Medvedev and Fritz. No guarantee that he ends up beating Humbert. Humbert could be tricky on hard court, so I think Fritz's draw is pretty tough. Medvedev, though, I think is probably a decent price at 250. If Djokovic ends up struggling in this environment again, I think Medvedev could show up to sweep and potentially take over the quarter. So he played great tennis in Dubai. I think he'd play well here again. 250, I like the price. I'll go for it there. So I'll take Djokovic, but not by himself. I'll go for Joker at 160 and Medvedev at plus 250 as my two choices for the second quarter. Moving on for the third quarter. For this one, this is the Zverev quarter. Zverev we saw lose pretty, I'd say, early on into Acapulco as he lost to Kecmanovic in 3 sets. He's favored here at plus 225. You have Felix at 275, Rublev at 550, who once again was able to get out of Dubai en route to Indian Wells, so he will be playing in the event. Musetti at 7-1, Fees at 9-1, Caboli at 12-1. You have Tiafoe at 16-1. Fresh off the runner-up finish in Acapulco, you have Nakashima at 16-1, Berrettini at plus 2,000, Brooksby at 28-1, Kecmanovic at 33-1. If you want to back the guy who's been in pretty good form lately, basically it. Yeah, I don't really have much else to add besides I do think, like the other quarters, there will be a relatively chalky finish here. Now, I do think that Zverev, even though he ended up struggling against Kecmanovic, that I really didn't want to take him. But I really like the draw. He has Manarino or Berrettini in the second round, which I think should be manageable for him. In the same immediate section as Nakashima, I think Zverev's a bad matchup for Nakashima, because Nakashima, we know, has a serve. Not the greatest rally tolerance. The unforced error issue can be present. I think Zverev should beat him over the course of 2 or 3 sets. Same immediate section as Caboli or Tiafoe. So we'll make it a rematch of the Acapulco final. But I do think that Zverev should have a pretty manageable path here. I'll take him at 225. Yes, I can't stand him, I understand. But I think the quarter is pretty favorable, at least for his immediate draw. Of course, I'm not going to take him by himself. I'm not a lunatic. But I do think Zverev at 225 is probably worth something. If you want to pass on it because you can't stand him, I understand your angle there. But for the actual breakdown, I think Zverev should be favored in the quarter, and I'll take him. So I'll go for Zverev here at 225. But I will throw in Felix at 275, who's played very well recently, did get killed by Medvedev in the semis in Dubai, which we called. We thought Medvedev was the best player in the field by a pretty decent margin. Felix, though, has been playing good tennis recently. I do want to point out the schedule's a bit tougher by comparison to Zverev. So he has Rublev in what could be a potential third-round matchup, then Fees or Musetti in a fourth-round matchup, and then he'd have to face off against Zverev after it. So I took Zverev because I think that his overall draw by comparison is easier than Felix's, and I do think that Zverev, even though I can't stand the damn guy, I think that his quarter is definitely manageable, and I think he should be able to find himself in a deep run here. But I'll go for the 2 guys who I think have the best chance of success. Rublev, I can't trust. Musetti, I understand he's been getting better on hard court, but I don't really trust him enough to actually take him with this many high-end players around him at 7-1. Fees, I think, could be dangerous here, but I don't know if I trust him to actually go all the way to the semifinals. So based on that, I'm with chalk. I'm going to go with Zverev at 225, and I'll go for Felix at 275 as my 2 choices for the third quarter. Moving on to the fourth quarter. This is the Sinner quarter. So, of course, you have Sinner as a massive favorite. He's about minus 325, give or take. The fourth quarter, you have Sinner at minus 325. You have Shelton at 5-1. Mensik is at 12-1. Paul's at 12-1. Tien's at 25-1. Fokina's at 28-1. Fonseca 28-1. You kind of get the point. So, for starters, just to be clear, there's a 0% chance I'm taking Shelton. If Shelton can barely win any sets against Sinner, I'm not picking him and hoping that Sinner loses to somebody else. I don't see any value on Shelton. Mensik, though, was able to beat Sinner in Doha. So if I was going to take anybody that I think could dethrone Sinner, it would be Mensik. Having said that, am I taking anybody against Sinner? No. I'm going chalk. I'm not going to bet this, but I'll go Sinner minus 325. I do think that Sinner, once again, despite having a slump, is still a top 2 player in the world. I think that his quarter's pretty weak. And the fact that Shelton has the second lowest odds, and we know that Shelton basically never wins a set against Sinner anymore, I think Sinner goes away with it. I think he'll bounce back. He should have a chip on his shoulder after having the underwhelming loss in the quarters in Doha. I think he ends up looking pretty good here, so I'll go with Sinner at minus 325. The faster-paced courts should help him out a lot. And I do think that he should just have a pretty decent path. But reading off the players here again in the quarter, Alcaraz owns de Minaur as well. But the first quarter, you have Bublik. I know Korda in there is the fourth lowest odds as a joke. But for this quarter, Mensik and Paul, sure. I don't really see much of a threat here. I don't see Mensik beating Sinner twice. And we know Shelton never beats Sinner besides the first ever meeting. So give me chalk. I got Sinner as the only guy in this quarter. Give me him at minus 325. So once again, the recap here for the quarter outrights here. First quarter, Indian Wells, we're going to go with Alcaraz by himself at minus 400. Not going to bet this, but still, I'm not going to go against him because he's an absolute machine, especially on outdoor hard court events recently. So give me Alcaraz minus 400. Second quarter, you have Djokovic at plus 160. And you have Medvedev at 250. That'll be my two choices there for the second quarter. Third quarter, I'll go Zverev at 225 and Felix at 275. And for the fourth quarter, I have Sinner at minus 325. So moving on to the outright bets to actually win the event. Starting off with the favorites. You have a co-favorite situation in some spots. Alcaraz, though, is the favorite in most books at around plus 150. Sinner around the same price. I'll say plus 150 as well. Joker is at 13-1. Medvedev is 22-1. Shelton 28-1. Zverev 28-1. Fritz is at 35-1, former champion. Felix 40-1. de Minaur 40-1. Musetti 50-1. Draper at 65-1. To be honest, you kind of get the point. So I saw in the comments section earlier, Matt was kind of teasing me, mentioning if I was going to go with pure chalk, if I was going to go for Alcaraz and Sinner again. You already knew the answer to that question. The answer is yes. I'm obviously taking Sinner and Alcaraz again. And even with Sinner losing early in Doha, the strategy still won. It didn't matter because Alcaraz won. So I've said this before. Anytime Alcaraz and Sinner are in the same event, I'm taking Alcaraz, I'm taking Sinner, and I'm taking nobody else. That is all I have. So a shock to many here. We are going with chalk once again. Alcaraz at 150, Sinner at 160. Have a nice day. Yeah, that's all I got. I don't have anything else. Once again, don't fix what isn't broken. We've used this strategy constantly for the last 2 years, basically, and I'm pretty sure we've won every single time. Maybe with the exception of one event, but I think it involved a Sinner retirement because of injury against Greek Sport, and that got a bit weird. But the point is, Sinner and Alcaraz, when they're healthy, when they're in the same event, you don't really have to waste money on other people. So I'm going to go with chalk for this one. I see Sashi asking which book has quarters. The only book that I see right now is BetMGM. BetMGM is the only book that has quarters listed at the moment, so that's the actual odds I'm using for this show. Normally, I would shop around with Bet365 or DraftKings, etc. Sometimes FanDuel. But right now, BetMGM's the only book that has quarter odds up. So I'm using it. That's the only thing that I have. So Sasha, to answer your question, it is currently BetMGM as the only book that has a monopoly on quarter odds right now. So once again, my absolute chalk plays, which are completely expected. Alcaraz at 150, Sinner at 160. And once again, we'll see if they play each other in the final, but whatever. Djokovic at 13-1, I thought about. He ended up beating Sinner, of course, in the Aussie Open. I don't see him beating Sinner and Alcaraz, so he would need one of them to lose. But pure chalk has worked out very well when they play in the same event. And there's really no reason to ever switch up the strategy. So there you go. Sinner and Alcaraz once again. We'll see if either of them end up winning this event. Anyways, to wrap it up for the outrights in Indian Wells, time to move on into the lock and dog picks for the first round. Before we get into the actual lock and dog picks, a reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Arnold Fantasy. They've been covered with pick entries for almost every single sport. They also recently bumped up their payouts. 2-pick entries are now 3.5x, and 3-pick entries are now 6.5x. So once you can capitalize on the bigger payouts with Underdog Fantasy, if you're new to the platform, great sign-up deal. Play $5, get $75 bonus funds when you sign up with the promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy. We're also brought to you by Novig. So Novig, of course, is America's #1 prediction market for sports. Get some great prices, reduced juice available for a bunch of different markets as well, including outrights for Indian Wells. So download the app, and you'll get a great deal. Spend $5, $50 in bonus funds when you sign up with the promo code SGPN. Once again, that's Novig, promo code SGPN. And a reminder, I mentioned it before, I'll say it again. 15% of everything in the merch store, promo code MARCH. So if you like Tennis Gambling Podcast merchandise, nice discount for you. NBA Gambling Podcast, any show with the network, all merchandise has a discount if you use the code MARCH at checkout at the SGPN merch store. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Finished going through the outrights for Indian Wells. Time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, going to a matchup between Ugo Carabelli and Dam. And for this one, we're going to go with Dam to win the first set and the match at -125. Now, Carabelli has been a constant fade on the show on hard courts. He is horrendous on hard court. So Carabelli has lost 11 of his last 13 hard court matches. Not good. Dam, though, we know has been good early in matches. Dam has won the first set in 8 of his last 9. So Dam is a fast starter. We know he's still young. Made the semis in Montpellier in his last ATP event. The point is, in the actual event, he made the semis for the first time ever. Some confidence should build from that. Plus, we saw him in the match that he lost to Manarino. He won the first set 6-1. So once again, he's a very good starter in these matches. And I do think Carabelli, being a very underwhelming hardcourt player, of course, as a clay specialist, I think it's a good matchup for Dam. Carabelli, not exactly a great server. We know Dam is a good server. And with the boosted speed for the courts here in Indian Wells, then that should help him out a bit. But Dam, we know, has a bit more talent on hardcourt than Carabelli. He's also American. Should be some crowd support there. But I'll fade Carabelli again on hardcourt. It worked out well for us last year. Once again, 2-11 in his last 13 hardcourt matches. Dam is about -180. The spread's about 2.5. I think there's a world where maybe Dam ends up slipping up a little bit in a set. So I'll keep the door open for what could be a 3-setter. But Dam has been very good early in matches, winning the first set in 8 of the last 9. I think it's a good way to reduce the juice from -180 to around -125. So I'll go for Dam to win the first set and the match as my lock for the show at -125. For the dog, going to a pretty fun match on the card for the first round. You have Fonseca taking on Collignon. For this one, going with Collignon, a team total over 12.5 at +100. Collignon's been very good recently. He's gone over the team total in 4 of his last 5 matches. He has been also good in the Challenger circuit so far. He had a bit of a run there late in the year in 2025, and he's been looking very, very sharp. I think he's alive to actually win this match outright. He won a Challenger event in the past, I'd say a couple weeks ago in France. He won a couple matches in Davis Cup as well. Fonseca, though, has been horrendous so far this season. He's lost 4 of his last 5. Now, I understand most of those were on clay, but Fonseca has really not looked that sharp so far this season, and he's had a bunch of matches recently that have not ended in straight sets. 5 of his last 6 matches have not ended in straight sets. So Fonseca, even when he wins, tends to find himself in a bit of a long marathon. And I want to point out the head-to-head actually does have a win for Fonseca, but it was a couple years ago, and it was in 3 sets, Davis Cup action. And in that match, despite losing, Collignon ended up winning 13 games. So I do think there's a couple ways to get there. If you end up getting a 3-setter, you're in good shape, whether Collignon wins or loses. I don't see many lopsided sets in this matchup. Or Collignon wins, and he has gone over this team total in 4 of his last 5. But I think that Collignon's alive to win this, but I'll leave the door open for a repeat of the Davis Cup action, which was a competitive 3-setter. I think Fonseca, though, is overvalued. He's been overvalued all season. Collignon's good if you watch him play. Good hardcore player. I'll take the team total over at even money as my dog for the show. So once again, the lock and dog picks for Indian Wells round 1. Lock's going to be on Dam to win the first set and the match against Carabelli at -125. For the dog, give me Collignon team total over 12.5 against Fonseca at even money. Anyways, going to wrap it up for the show. Back once again later on in the week, either for the second round or the third round. We'll see how my schedule opens up. Until next time, though, good luck to all of you and all of your bats. Bye.